Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Cavletics, an inside look into the athletics department here at Bossier Parish Community College. I'm your host, Charlie Cavell, and today we're talking BPCC Cavaliers basketball with the man I like to call the preacher, and that's Coach Chris Lovell. And Chris, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy day and busy schedule to join us. We really, really appreciate it. Well, Chris, your Cavaliers are 18-9 overall and 7-9 in Region 14 play. Give me your assessment of the team's performance up to this point.
Well, I mean, obviously we started hot, and we came out, had a great start to the season. I think at one point we were 14-0 in January and nationally ranked. We received our first nationally ranking for the first time in like 2 decades. And so that was a great accomplishment for us. It was one of our goals. But then as we got into region play, as you well know, it's difficult. And we've had some really good wins in conference, and then we've had some really bad losses in conference, if I'm being honest. But, you know, all that being said, I think we're in a good position heading into the conference tournament here in about 2 weeks. And I think we have a team that can beat anyone if we're firing on all cylinders.
You have 3 regular season games remaining plus the tournament, and I know you really want to get to that 20-win plateau. Why is that such an important number to you?
Well, it's important because when I first got here, they only had like 4 wins. And so one of our goals at the beginning of the season was not only to make the conference tournament, postseason play again for a 3rd straight year since I've been here. But, you know, we had some other goals: receive a national ranking, which we were able to do, win 20-plus games, and hopefully win the conference tournament and go to the national tournament, which I think all those things are still in play.
Unfortunately, right now, and here's the bad news, you're in the midst of a 4-game losing skid, the longest of the season for this team. And what do you assess has been the main reason for that skid?
Well, you know, the JUCO season is a long season. I mean, the guys get here in August and we start going, and here we are almost on the cusp of March starting. And so it's a long season, and you got to remember you're dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. They're freshmen and sophomores, so you're not dealing with juniors and seniors. And I just think the grind of the season, the toughness of our conference, you know, all those things, it requires night to night bringing your A-plus game. And if you don't, you're going to lose. And I think we've had the ups and downs of most young teams have, and we definitely have demonstrated that.
Well, that leads me to my next question. One area I think you would agree is that Region 14 is really, really a meat grinder. And but the area that this team, I think, has struggled with is not only its lack of depth, but its lack of quality depth. You have essentially 7 or 8 guys who play a considerable amount of minutes, whereas a lot of the teams, particularly in Region 14 that you struggled with, like Navarro or Kilgore, not only have a lot of depth, 10 to 12 guys that they run in and out, but depth in the front court especially, which really poses a matchup problems for you and your team, and that's kind of my assessment. Would you agree with that?
Well, the longer the season goes, you're only as good as your bench. Your top 5 guys typically are going to give you their averages, which has pretty much been true for the most part for us. But it's what are the other guys on the bench, coming off the bench, are going to give you. And we've had some guys overperform, we've had some guys underperform, and then we've had some guys not perform. And so for us, you know, I think in the conference, we've got to get to a place to where we can get deep enough moving into the future where when the season wears on and it gets tougher and tougher and tougher and injuries happen and so forth, that we can overcome some of those things. And some of these other programs are so established, they're able to have 10, 11, 12 guys that are good as our, you know, 6 or 7 guys, and we've got to get to a place where we have 10 guys that on the roster that are at that level, and we're just not there yet, and it's part of rebuilding this program.
And I think you would agree with me that Region 14 is a meat grinder of a league, and especially the North Division, where 4 of the 7 teams have 20 or more wins, and all but Parish Junior College has a winning record. Would I be too far off in equating Region 14 to being the junior college version of maybe the Atlantic Coast Conference, ACC, or the old Big East where you had the Georgetown, Syracuse, St. John? I mean, just a night in and night out meat grinder.
Well, it's arguably the toughest, and just talking about our part of the conference, the North region of it, it's considerably the toughest JUCO conference in the country. And so, coaches call me, Division I coaches call me all the time, and they're like, man, it's such a grind. Every night you have to bring your A game, and it is. But from where I sit as a coach, you want to be in that meat grinder because I think it prepares you for postseason play, and that's kind of where we're at. We're trying to get some confidence going into the tournament, which we feel like we can beat anyone in the conference if we bring our best.
Before last year's team posted a 17-14 record, the program hadn't had a winning record in over a decade, and in reality, the program had not even been competitive in Region 14 until Chris Lovell arrived. But even so, BPCC was still, Chris, picked to finish last by the other schools in the region. With all that being said, and looking back 3 years ago, did you know when you took this job that it was going to be a 3 to 5 year process before you could really get the program where you believe it needs to be?
Well, no doubt. I mean, anytime you take over a program that had the situation that we had here at BPCC when I came in, we knew it couldn't take just 1 year. It was going to take multiple years. And so we knew that. And, I think one thing that's real important to talk about is, respect is earned. And we have not had the respect over the years because we hadn't been a viable opponent in the league or in the conference. And so now I think we're starting to garner that respect over the last 2 or 3 years. And I think in the future, we'll see some of those preseason polls change. But more importantly, right now is focusing on the team we have right now and finishing as strong as we can. And I really like my guys.
How much of a struggle has it been to get this program to where it can compete on a consistent year in and year out basis with the other 12 basketball playing schools in Region 14?
Well, I think from where we started, 3 years ago when I got here, it was a daunting task. We were so far behind scholarship-wise. We were so far behind with just the support system, financial support from sponsors and donors in the area. We were just behind in every area, behind all these other long-established programs like the Tylers, the Kilgores, the Trinity Valleys, and the Panolas. We were so far behind them in not just one area, but in every area. If it was just our players, that'd be one thing, but we were behind in every area. And so I think we've come a long way. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's also been the most rewarding thing I've ever done because I think when you see the small rewards along the way, you're like, hey, we're getting there. It's very, very exciting, and I think the future is incredibly bright.
Well, that's a lot coming from a guy that's won multiple state championships in the Texas area, the TAPS leagues over in Texas. So that's quite a statement. Do you believe the pieces are in place that now, like your coaching staff, scholarships, facilities, financial support, et cetera, or is it still, and it always kind of a work in progress, I would imagine?
Well, sure. Yeah, we've definitely made progress. And I think now we have the most important things in place to be able to recruit the best possible talent out there and compete with the Trinity Valleys in recruiting, which we did this last year. And so now it's continuing to improve in every area as we have caught up in most of those places.
Before we take a real quick time out, I want to ask you, you talked about respect. And do you think now that not just basketball, men's basketball, but the entire athletics department here at BPCC is starting to garner more and more respect from the other schools, all of which are in Texas, being the lone school not in Texas, right. Louisiana, it takes a lot. And you mentioned, respect is earned, it's not given. By BPCC hosting the Region 14 men's and women's basketball tournament, by John Rennie being named kind of the assistant women's commissioner on that side. Do you think that respect is starting to take hold?
No doubt. And I think not only are we garnering respect within our conference, but I think we're garnering respect around the country. You know, I think the NJCAA has really, really rewarded BPCC here of late. You know, obviously we had a player named National Player of the Week for all NJCAA basketball players. We just had a softball player named Player of the Week over all NJCAA, not just our conference, but over the country. And I think as we continue to have that kind of success on a national level, sure, we're definitely respected within the conference if you talk to any of the coaches now throughout all of our sports. But yeah, our athletic program is growing and garnering the respect that's only achieved over time. And I think that's what people miss in all of this, is that, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, we didn't have that respect in any sport. But now with softball doing well, baseball's doing better, women's basketball and men's basketball and cross country having the success it had this year, I think the athletic program as a whole is on a rise.
We're going to take a brief time out right now, but stay tuned because following the break, we'll have more with BPCC head basketball coach Chris Lovell. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
A promise was made. A promise that hit the beaches of Normandy. A covenant that split the skies over Berlin. A vow that captured Iwo Jima. A promise was made. A solemn oath that liberated Seoul. A sacred trust that defended Quezon. A pact that dug in Da Nang. A contract that weathered Tet. A promise was made. A pledge that stormed the desert in Iraq. A bond that patrolled door to door in Fallujah. An IOU that braved IEDs in Kandahar. A promise was made to America's veterans. A promise we all must keep. DAV fights for all veterans and their families so they get the health care, financial benefits, and support they earned. If you're a veteran who needs help or you'd like to help us keep the promise, visit DAV.org.
I teach a wide variety of things, including film editing, directing, documentary making, lighting. I fell in love with art as a young child, and it's just always something that has stuck with me.
You know, I love the whole process of going on set, going back into the editing room, telling a story. That's what I really love about film.
I got laid off from my job, and I figured this was the perfect opportunity to go to school to get a degree for it.
As a kid, I was really into geeky stuff. I couldn't think of anything else that I would rather do.
They really provide you with the equipment and you know, the necessary tools in order to, you know, advance in a career, especially in communications field.
Well, one thing that really drew me to video production especially is it's just a way to reach people. And as someone who likes to communicate with other people, I felt that mass communication, especially broadcasting, was a tool that I could use.
You get some hands-on experience. They've got good stuff to work with. They really know what they're doing, and they're willing to pass it on.
When our students leave Bossier Parish Community College, they are equipped to get a job immediately, or they can move on to a 4-year degree.
Welcome back to Cavletics. I'm Charlie Cavell, and we're visiting today with BPCC head basketball coach Chris Lovell. Well, Chris, let's delve right into it. Let's get into your players, beginning with the starting 5, which has been the same 5 players pretty much throughout the entire season. Let's start with freshman point guard E.J. Clark out of Dallas's McKinney High School. Tell us why E.J. is so special to you and what makes him such a good point guard.
Well, EJ is very, very fast. That's what the first thing everyone says about EJ is how fast he is. But what I love about EJ Clark is that he brings his work ethic and his intensity every day. Never says a word, just plays hard every game. And, you know, I think he's had the typical freshman season, up and down in numbers. Every freshman we've ever had here that started has averaged around 8-9 points a game. That's kind of where he is. But when those guys come back their sophomore year, they typically increase their averages. And we expect the same thing from EJ. But we've been real pleased with his toughness and his leadership.
Personally, why is he so special to you?
Well, I mean, I've known EJ since he was a little kid. His dad was my assistant coach at Prestonwood in Texas, and so I've watched EJ mature and grow and so forth. And so, yeah, I do have a place in my heart for EJ, and I do want to see him succeed, but he's a heck of a player.
And you're right, trying to get a word out of EJ, you better bring a can opener.
That's
he doesn't
right.
Say a whole lot.
Yeah, I just say a lot, and he just goes, yes, sir, yes, sir. So.
Your two guard is Erie Olanati, who's from Houston, but came to BPCC by way of Miles Community College. Erie has been a steady player all season long. He's not the guy that is going to put up double-doubles every night, but he is the guy that'll get you 14 to 16 points and dish out 4 or 5 assists. And, you know, he's just a steady performer, and I think that kind of goes to that sophomore in him.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Yuri has been, the best word to describe Yuri is consistent. We can count on him almost every night to bring what he does, and he's shown that all year. Obviously, he's already signed a national letter of intent to play for the University of Louisiana Monroe, so we're so proud for him and his future. But he is our best shooter, and so we really rely on him to make shots, and he is a shot maker.
You mentioned signing with ULM, and I know Keith Richard, and I know you do as well. That seems to be, I mean, when I look at that, the more and more I think about him, Erie signing with ULM, that's really a perfect fit for him, isn't it?
It is, and for these guys, it's all about finding the perfect fit for them. And I think for Yuri, he's walking into a program that obviously is having a great year this year in college basketball, but I think he fits what they do, and I think he'll have great success.
You brought back only one starter from last year's team, and that's Jason Holliday. Two things you never, ever, ever have to question about Jason Holliday, and that's his effort and his toughness. And he shows up, plays hard, night in and night out, and more often than not, he's playing hurt. Tell us about Jason.
Well, Jason's a dream kid to coach. You know, for me, you wish you had 4 or 5 of those guys, you know, but Jason has a unique blend of not just being able to score the basketball and do those kind of things, you know, which is a lot of guys just look for that, but he is our defensive leader. When he is locked in and guarding, he brings some energy that is contagious to the rest of the guys, and we have to have him down the stretch to be successful, as we've had to have him all year. But he's a great kid. We're excited for his future. East Carolina was in here yesterday recruiting him, and so that's exciting to see where he's going to end up in the future as well.
Well, it's funny, a little tidbit about Jason. He played quarterback in high school at Bruley High and right outside of Baton Rouge, and most people, because of Jason's aggressive nature and his toughness, think for sure that, well, he played linebacker or safety in football, but no, Jason was a quarterback, and that just goes to show you not only is he tough and has that aggressive style, but he's also got it upstairs too. He knows how to play the game.
He does, and I've always said this about Jason. He's got the highest ceiling of anyone on our team. I don't think we've seen his best basketball because he just completed his first year-round full year of just playing basketball, not splitting time with another sport.
Jason hasn't signed anywhere yet. You mentioned East Carolina was in yesterday, but I know former BPCC coach Mike McConaughey and Northwestern State's been hard on him all year long. We've seen Coach McConaughey back in here at BPCC and recruiting Jason hard. And any kind of idea of where he may be leaning?
No, not right now. I think it's still early. You know, last year, Mo Muhammad, who was our best player, didn't sign with Louisiana Tech till mid-June. And so I tell people all the time, it's still very, very early in the recruiting process. But Jason will sit down at the end of the season and take his visits and then, you know, pray it through and talk it through with the people most important and make a wise decision for his future.
One guy who has garnered a lot of accolades this season is Akron transfer swingman Eric Parrish. He's been the Louisiana Sports Writers Player of the Week a couple of times, the NJCAA Player of the Week. Is it fair to say that this team will go as far as Eric Parrish will take them?
I think that's a very accurate statement. You know, EP, as we call him, is a special talent. And when he is locked in to what's going on, he's a guy that can give you a triple-double on any night, as he's had, I think, probably 6 or 8 triple-doubles already this season, which is really unheard of. To have a kid...
I'm going to stop you there.
Yeah.
To tell you how unheard of that is, I was watching the Duke-North Carolina game the other night. In the history, the unbelievable history of Duke basketball, they've had 4 triple-doubles in their entire history.
Well, and I think that just goes to show you, on most teams, you have a guy who's your leading scorer, then you've got another guy who's your leading assist guy, and then you've got another guy who's your leading rebounder. Well, on our team, it's the same guy, and so he is very, very important to what we do, and I think your statement about we'll go as far as he can take us is very accurate, along with the other guys pitching in and doing what they do.
I asked the previous question because we've seen throughout the season that when Eric shows up and plays to the level he's capable of playing, this team can compete with anyone. But when he doesn't show up, it leaves a gaping hole in the lineup and leaves the team very vulnerable.
It does sometimes, but, I think, if you look at the big picture, we'll play 30 games in the regular season, then go into postseason play. Eric Parrish has scored somewhere between 14 and 30 points, I think, in all of those games with the exception of about 5. That's pretty consistent. And so, our other guys, when he does have an off night, because he's going to have them, they've got to be able to pick up the slack. And that's one of the things we've really been talking about and working on. And it doesn't all fall on Eric's shoulders, but he is a big, big piece of the puzzle for us heading into postseason play.
At the post position, you've got Loyola Marymount transfer Mikhail Simmons, who we had on the show last semester.
Sure.
And in all fairness to Mikhail, at 6'9", he's usually been going up against bigger and taller guys at the center spot, where he may have been a power forward at other places. Give us your thoughts on Mikhail's progress throughout the season.
Well, I think he's grown. I think he's gotten better as the competition level has gone up. And you can't say that about everybody.
No, that's true.
And he's a little banged up right now, has a little bit of a knee issue. And the other night against Trinity Valley, he played, probably the most minutes he's played all year. In 38 minutes, he stayed out of foul trouble. He gave us 13 points, about 7-8 rebounds. And I've been real proud of his toughness and his growth over the season. And I think he's starting to kind of peak his play at the right time. And so he is a mismatch for other people because he can sit down and guard 1 through 5. And offensively speaking, he can step out away from the rim as well.
We talked earlier about lack of quality depth. Well, do you have what I consider to be the proverbial 6-man in Paris Harris, who is from Hot Springs, Arkansas, but came to BPCC from Itawamba Community College over in Mississippi. Over the last 10 games or so, I'd say Paris has been the most consistent offensive threat. Seemingly every night he comes off the bench to give you 17 to 23 points, about 5 or 6 rebounds. He's that lunch pail guy, isn't he? Is that a fair assessment?
He is, and the thing I love about Paris is every day in practice, he practices with that same intensity, and so you always say you're going to play like you practice, and it's really true for him. His level of play has risen as the years progress, as he's figured out our system and grown comfortable knowing where his shots are going to come from and what we're trying to do. And Paris is a joy to coach, and his future is incredibly bright. I tell you what, I wish we had him another year.
Well, let's while we got a couple of minutes, let's talk about the Region 14 tournament. It is going to be held at Centenary College, hosted by Bossier Parish Community College, which I think is a huge deal that the other schools, all of which are in Texas, has granted BPCC the chance to host a championship event, both men's and women's tournament, March 5th through 9th, a couple of weeks away, as you mentioned, at Centenary College's Gold Dome. It's kind of a going home, so to speak, for me in a roundabout way, because I moved up here in 1995 to be the sports information director at Centenary, and have fond memories of my 3 years or so at Centenary College. And I think it's just going to be a great venue, a great location, and I'm really deeply hoping that the rest of the members of our conference and of Region 14 see what a great site this is for the region tournament, that they'll consider keeping it here.
Sure. It's a great opportunity for us in the conference, and I think it shows the respect, back to what we talked about, that we've garnered over the last several years with our athletic programs. the greatest thing about a conference tournament is this. It's about getting the most exposure for the student athletes in the programs as possible for their next steps of their future. The reason it's such a good venue, the reason it's in such a great city, and I love Shreveport Bossier, I grew up here, but the reason is we have a regional airport that's 10 minutes away from Centenary, which is going to allow all the college coaches to come in and take part of the event. It's going to be easy to get to, it's going to be great exposure, and the people are going to have other things to do in our city other than just go watch basketball, which I think it's a great thing for everyone. And so, you know, we're excited about it. We hope we can get hot and get on a run and do the best we can.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us today. Coach Lovell's Cavaliers will be in the friendly confines of the Coach Billy Montgomery Gymnasium tomorrow afternoon when they play host to the Panola College Ponies in a big divisional matchup. Tip-off scheduled for 4 p.m. Come out and support your BPCC Cavaliers basketball team. It's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank Coach Chris Lovell for joining us, and good luck with the rest of the season. And folks, thank you for viewing Cavletics today. Join us again next Friday as we bring you the latest on Bossier Parish Community College Cavalier Athletics. I'm Charlie Cavell, bidding you a good sports day.